Hello there, it's Chris Lotus from the future. Not too far, but at least compared to when this video was originally uploaded. I took the video down after the 10th person had questioned me about being confused about something in the video, and when 10 different people are confused and questioning me about the same exact thing, for me personally, maybe I'm being too hard on myself, but when that happens, I feel like I haven't done a good enough job of getting my point across. And I did not feel like answering the same exact question over and over again, so I took the video down. And I know some of you are thinking, well, you could have just made the correction a comment and pinned it to the top of your comment section. I've done that before and people just flat out ignore it. It's not everybody doing this obviously, but a lot of people just do not pay attention and they do not read, which is one of the most frustrating things about content creation that makes it a little less fun, but hey, I still love it. Moving right along, let me talk about the very topic in question. People wondering, why do I have KOF characters on my don't want list in this video? Because a couple of people complaining took it as me just filling space or just picking on KOF characters. I even posted this screenshot, and Raito ADV, shoutouts as always, even commented this on a post where I was talking about why I deleted the video. In case you can't tell from this, people have been requesting KOF characters for Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, and I am mostly against that, which leads to my second point. Some people also asked, why couldn't you just take all KOF characters and put it in one entry? That is because that is not how I feel. There are a couple of KOF characters that I would totally be cool with being in City of the Wolves. Meili Jinju, Che Lim, and even Heavy D, who I mentioned in this very video. I'm cool with KOF characters being in this game, but my list of exceptions is quite minuscule. Another reason why I specified the 4 KOF characters you'll see later is the fact that, at least for me, through my 2 eyes, which is all I can speak for, these 4 were the ones that I've seen people requesting the most. And I even mentioned and responded to some of the reasons why people wanted these characters in this game. But apparently I didn't get that across clear enough, so here you go. Also, for people that were upset about me not having Mai and Yamazaki and Blue Mary on my list, first of all, it's my list, my wish list. It's in the title. Learn how to pay attention, learn how to read. Number 2, imagine if I did a video like that. Like, imagine if this was my wish list. Like, number 10, Mai, number 9, Yamazaki, number 8, Blue Mary. This list sounds boring. If I had a list full of a bunch of characters that have had hella screen time in Fatal Fury and KOF, I would have never made a video on this topic. Like, if it wasn't obvious enough at first glance, I'm repping for the more relatively obscure, underutilized, and underrated characters. But yeah, a lot of people didn't like the fact that I took the video down, so backed by popular demand and hopefully with some clarity, here you go, enjoy. We have been on the road to the release of Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, and after yet another spectacular character reveal, everything is looking all the more promising. While I am sure there are some critics, I'm confident that the overall reception to the game thus far can be summed up like this. My God! Yeah, I just wanted a reason to use that soundbite. Love ya, Colt. As it is with most newly revealed fighting games, players eagerly anticipate the reveal trailer for their favorite characters to return, unless of course their favorite character is the main protagonist, because of course, they're usually revealed right off the bat. Many players have their roster wish lists, and well, here's mine. As you can tell from the video title, as a little bit of added controversy, I've even decided to list those characters I hope are benched this time around, which was honestly kind of difficult, because spoiler, there aren't many Fatal Fury characters I really dislike. Anyways, here are 10 characters I hope are included in City of the Wolves, and 10 that I hope are not. Number 10. Who do I want? This unnamed woman. The original cancelled Garo 2 had a nice chunk of scrap characters. I personally only found 3 of them interesting. One of them is Kuon, one we'll talk about later, and the other is this mystery woman. I could only imagine what kind of fighting style she'd have. Probably something super unorthodox and esoteric, I would think. Who is it that I don't want? Toji Sakata. Kind of. Visually, I thought he was pretty cool. A deceptively strong elder man rocking an outfit that hints at him either being super laid back or constantly on vacation. Unfortunately, his only playable fighting game appearance was in the clunky Fatal Fury Wild Ambition, which stifled his potential, at least in my eyes. On one hand, this kinda ruined him for me, but on the other hand, would I be mad if he came back? Not really. I think he'd be able to show more personality and be more fleshed out in a game like City of the Wolves. Number 9. Who do I want? Bob Wilson. This one might surprise some of you who have been watching me for a while, but I like Bob Wilson. I always thought he was super cool, and still do. His animations are among some of the coolest and most memorable in his debut in Fatal Fury 3. My favorite animation of his actually isn't one you'll see during a match, but during the map scene wherein the player proceeds to the next stage. They have this guy spinning on his head as he makes his way to the next stop. It is by far one of the funniest and smoothest animations in the game. In the KOF games, Bob Wilson has mostly been confined to making cameos, some of which involve the Pow Pow Cafe. Speaking of, who is it that I don't want? Richard Meyer. Again, kinda like the Toji entry, kind of. I don't hate Richard, I just think Bob is cooler. If Richard returns, I wouldn't be upset. Both have been part of some hilarious moments in the KOF games, which kinda sorta helped me tolerate the fact that they were never playable in the mainline series. Richard did make a pretty cool return in Maximum Impact 2 and Regulation A. I personally feel like City of the Wolves is gonna have a mixture of old school characters and new school characters, seeing that a bit of both have been revealed or teased thus far. Between these two, I just think the student should get the spot. Number 8. Who do I want? A guest character. I've seen some comments here and there, and I'm pretty sure this one's gonna be controversial, but hey, I said what I said. In an interview with VGC, Yasuki Oda did not rule out the possibility of including guest characters. The question posed by the interviewer specifically mentioned fighters from other fighting game series, which could apply to both first and third-party guest characters. SNK does have a bit of a history including third-party guest characters into their fighting games, from Makoto Mizuguchi in KOF Maximum Impact to the Warden, Gongsun Lee, and Baiken in Samurai Shodown. Seeing that the Fatal Fury series has already had a first-party guest character, I'd personally want to see a third-party guest character. Some may view it as overkill and or want the game to be purely SNK or purely Fatal Fury, but I could see there being a benefit to including a third-party guest. Such characters have the potential to draw in people from outside the SNK fandom. Believe it or not, there are people who will buy a fighting game off of the strength of the inclusion of a single character. And yeah, that also applies to guest characters. With all that being said, you're probably wondering what third-party character I'd like to see in City of the Wolves. The possibilities are rather endless if you ask me. Going with the idea of attempting to draw from other large fan bases, one of the obvious answers could be a Street Fighter character, preferably someone other than Ryu or Ken. I get they are popular, but I'd like to see someone a bit more out of the box. For example, Alex. I'd love to see him go up against the likes of Tizok. The fact that Alex was the main protagonist and a prominent fan favorite of Street Fighter 3, a game whose heavily lauded Third Strike installment was released in arcades months before Garo, it would almost feel like things coming full circle. Looking back at the brief history of third-party guests in SNK fighting games, if SNK were to include a third-party guest, I bet it would be someone not only out of the box, but also relatively obscure. Of all those aforementioned characters, the most popular one is arguably Baiken. That's not to say that's a bad thing. I just feel SNK really tries to do something different and unexpected in terms of such guest characters. Speaking of trying something different and unexpected, who is it that I don't want? Kyo Kusanagi. I've seen a few people here and there saying they love to see Kyo in this game. Do I like Kyo? Yes. Do I think he's long overdue for a guest appearance in a major fighting game? Yes. Do I think he'll look awesome and translate well into the game? Yes. With that being said, you already know what it is given this entry. I don't want Kyo in this game. I mostly agree with fans that don't want to see any characters that originated in KOF to be playable in this game. At the same time, similar to previous entries, I wouldn't be looking to start a riot if he made it in. But still, give somebody else some screen time. Number 7. Who do I want? Freeman. He's gotta be in there, right? Right? Being a dark, psychotic, bloodthirsty character, Freeman was my top main in Garo. While most know of the influence that Terry and even Rock have had on characters inside and outside of fighting games, Freeman's influence isn't nearly acknowledged as much. He was clearly an inspiration for characters like Gendoji Wong's Tsukikage Arashi and Under Night In-Birth's Carmine, which is pretty much why I also mained those two characters. I just remembered City of the Wolves is set to have English dubs, and if Freeman is in, I'm very interested to see how his will fare, because for the most part, I've liked all of them. I'm also just as curious as to what happened after he got sniped. Who is it that I don't want? Iori Yagami. Some time ago, I recall somewhere someone speculated that Freeman was Iori after he had lost his power at the hands of one Ash Crimson. Although immensely flawed, I found this theory to be quite interesting as it indirectly reminded me that Iori was in a Fatal Fury game. Still, in the same vein as his eternal rival in the previous entry, I like him. I like him a lot. I like the idea of him as a guest character and wouldn't be too upset if he popped up, but I prefer he stay off the City of the Wolves roster. Number 6. Who do I want? Mr. Karate 2. Given the recent reveal of his student Marco, I almost feel like this may not happen. I find it rather weird that most of Mr. Karate 2's playable appearances were in non-canonical games, and that's in both the Art of Fighting / Fatal Fury and KOF timelines. As of KOF 15, Ryo Sakazaki has taken up the mantle. Finally. Marco was not only revealed recently, but he was also teased in one of the earlier City of the Wolves trailers. Though I like his master more, I'm not gonna raise a stink about him getting in, especially seeing SNK never pulled the trigger on putting him in KOF despite there being an open avenue for it in the storyline. Regardless, it's a win-win. Who is it that I don't want? Shun'ei. Uh-oh, can already hear some of those Shun'ei diehards getting pissy or rolling their eyes at me saying something like, ugh, just a filler entry to give yourself another excuse to hate on Shun'ei again, huh? First of all, I don't hate Shun'ei like a lot of his diehards think I do. He's actually very fun to play, especially with the latter KOF 15 updates. The changes and buffs to his air dashes was phenomenal. He's a unique protagonist that SNK dropped the ball on in several aspects, in my opinion. Get mad all you want, but you telling me how mad my opinion makes you is going to have next to no chance at making me change my mind. Anyways, I've seen some people here and there wanting Shun'ei to be playable in City of the Wolves. Despite being yet another character who originated and debuted in KOF, many have said people cite a quote from Yasuki Oda claiming that he and his best buddy Meiten-kun are more so Fatal Fury characters rather than KOF characters. I mean, I get it. The both of them are students of Tung Fu Rue, thus being part of a decorated lineage that spanned all throughout Fatal Fury's history and even went as far as to team with Tung in their KOF debuts. Despite the aforementioned explanation holding some water, the fact of the matter is, Shun'ei is still basically a KOF character first. His story began and progressed throughout KOF. If Shun'ei did pop up in City of the Wolves, I'd hope it wouldn't be anything short of a cameo, which could still be interesting. Being on the roster though, hard pass. Number 5. Who do I want? Dolvik Born. And we're back to that pool of scrap characters from the original Garo 2. Dolvik here is my favorite amongst the newer fighters. He has a cool design and looks like a total beast. I've seen a comment here and there speculating he may fight like Yamazaki or they would love to see them go head to head. I could totally see Dolvik being a brawler, but it's also worth noting that other tall, muscular fighters have sometimes had more unique and somewhat unexpected fighting styles. Looking at you, JP. Again, while I'm not too crazy about Preacha, seeing such a character did make me happy, as it does give me some hope that perhaps other unused characters like Dolvik will be utilized in some form or capacity. Who is it that I don't want? Meiten-kun. Pretty much everything I said about Shun'ei in this regard also applies to his BFF as well. It's crazy because Meiten-kun is one of my personal favorite characters to come out of the New Age saga. Again, I can see and even agree given their fighting styles and backstories. You could say that he and Shun'ei are more so Fatal Fury characters than KOF characters in spirit, but in reality, again, they started out and had their story pan out in KOF. Also, I'm not sure how much involvement Tung will even have in City of the Wolves. There's a chance, at least given my prediction, that the roster will still be something of a mixture of old and new characters. Still, unless it's some kind of cool cameo, even though I love him, I don't want to see him in this game either. Number 4. Who do I want? Rick Stroud. As was mentioned earlier, one of the great things about a Fatal Fury game coming out is that we could finally see some characters that SNK either mostly or completely kept out of KOF. One such character is Big Rick. He reportedly almost made it into KOF 99, but SNK ultimately chose Li Zhangfei, which is additionally interesting to me seeing that both of these characters debuted in the same game. Rick never made it to a KOF roster, instead being relegated to a cameo in KOF 94 Rebound and basically having KOF's first ever female boxer Vanessa adapt his style. While Vanessa is awesome, many fans still remember Rick and have been calling for him to make a playable return for quite some time. I'd say City of the Wolves is the perfect time. A cool, badass design like Rick would translate seamlessly into this game. Also, we haven't had any boxing practitioners teased or confirmed yet, and if they were looking for the coolest candidate, well, here you go. Who is it that I don't want? Michael Max. I have never been a fan of Mike Max. I've always found him pretty damn boring and painfully generic. Yeah, I get that he's obviously based on Mike Tyson, but so is Street Fighter's Balrog. I think he's a better design than Mike, which is crazy and funny because I've never really been a fan of his either. I'm actually more of a Dudley fan when it comes to boxers in Street Fighter. My overall favorite SNK boxing character is Heavy D, who I would have put on here, but something keep the KOF characters and KOF something. The funny thing is, the last time I heard that someone complained about Michael Max not being playable was that Inverse article. You know, the infamous KOF 15 review Inverse article. I mean, I could end this entry with that right there. In fact, I will. Next, number 3. Who do I want? Alice. As much as I love Alice, I knew she wasn't going to return in KOF 15. Between KOF 14 and 15, I like 15 more, but I wouldn't hesitate to break out 14 to play Alice and a couple of other characters again. Alice is a very funny character. Similar to Shune and Meitenkun, nice to see you both yet again. She is a Fatal Fury character at heart, considering her design and fighting style are basically a love letter to Fatal Fury. And yet, her fighting game debut was in KOF. What sets her apart from the two is the fact that she's been in a Fatal Fury game beforehand. They were just patchy slot games. Even I couldn't look past the possibility that her inclusion in 14 might have just been some cheeky free advertising for their patchy slot games. See also Love Heart and Mui Mui. While I'm sure some people will look at Alice as a wasted slot, seeing that her fighting style is a mishmash of 4 Fatal Fury characters, all of whom have either been revealed or teased thus far, it's that splash of comedy which is mixed into her fighting style that does it for me. While I know it's an obvious nod to her patchy slot origins, the fact that she makes coins fly out of opponents made me think that she was naturally born with the Pokemon technique Payday. I'd love to see how that looks in City of the Wolves. Who is it that I don't want? Huajai. Like Michael Max before him on this list, I have never been a fan. Again, I just find him painfully dull and boring. Of all the characters to make their returns to a fighting game, in the much lauded KOF 13 on top of that of all games, Huajai? Okay. But Chris, he hasn't been in Fatal Fury since the first game. My pick in this entry hasn't been in a Fatal Fury fighting game at all. This freaking guy got into KOF goddamn 13. It reminds me of how Ryu Hakutodo debuted in AOF and didn't make a standalone playable return to a fighting game until the much beloved CVS 2. Sorry, not sorry, I'm just not a fan. All the other Muay Thai fighters from other SNK fighting games are cooler than him in my opinion. Yep, him. I'm not really even a Joe fan, but I do think he's cooler than Huajai. Oh, come on, it's freaking King, of course she is. Yep, even him too. Number 2, who do I want? Tsugumi Sendo. It's great to see and have Tizak back. Whether he was the Griffin or the dinosaur, I personally wouldn't have minded it. With that being said, we got our big, beefy powerhouse wrestler. How about we also include a more agile, technical shoot wrestler? Of course, I choose Tsugumi. While I found Fatal Fury Wild Ambition to be clunky and rather average, one of its bright spots was Asuka Kazama's long-lost twin. Again, as a wrestling fan who loves fighting games, I especially love to see wrestling characters that don't always adhere to the power archetype that most of said characters are saddled with. That isn't to say that Tsugumi doesn't have any power moves, but she also throws some pretty impressive shoot kicks and even breaks out a sharpshooter, or as it was originally called, the Sasori Gatame. While it's famously known as the sharpshooter when associated with the Canadian wrestling legend Bret Hart and the Hart family, and the Scorpion Deathlock when associated with the recently retired American wrestling icon Sting, the move is actually the innovation of the South Korean Japanese wrestler Riki Choshu. What's additionally awesome is the fact that Tsugumi does the move and transitions it into a gnarly slam, only possible in such a cartoonish depiction of pro wrestling. Tsugumi is yet another one of SNK's most underrated and underutilized characters that could definitely make for a great return in City of the Wolves. Who is it that I don't want? Franco Bash. I always thought this guy's name closely resembled Hulkspeak. Franco Bash! Anyways, whenever I think of this character, I instantly think of his KOF 2002 Neo Geo World cameo. Dude looks like he's being tortured by the absence of a porta potty. SNK seemingly had no extra plans for him once he found his son, as he basically served as comic relief from that point onward. Not to mention, with games like Garo and KOF 94, SNK were looking to move away from older muscular male designs. I've just always found Muscle Man Mario here to be kind of a cornball. He's got a few hard-hitting attacks that I think are alright, but again, SNK has better big men. Healthy reminder, Dolvik is standing right there, and seeing that I feel like the roster is going to have some old school influence, bring in Yamazaki if that's the case. Finally, number 1, who is it that I want? Duck King. Come on SNK, come on. This dude's gotta be playable in this game. He has to be. Compared to a couple of other entries on this list, Duck King has actually had several playable fighting game appearances, more so in the Fatal Fury series. Overall, he hasn't been playable in a game since KOF 11. Thankfully, the next big SNK game is a Fatal Fury game, which, again, I feel increases the possibility of a Duck King return. This dancing fool's blend of breakdancing and acrobatics is just the coolest thing ever. Even incredibly silly animations of his are just loaded with charm. I could only dream of how that would look in such a game like City of the Wolves. Having him graduate from being a striker in KOF 2000 to a standalone playable character in my favorite KOF game, that was a pleasant surprise, SNK. I'm gonna need you to bring him back again for this game. And finally, who is it that I don't want? Axel Hawk. I won't keep you long for this entry. Quite frankly, everything I said about Michael Max can also apply to Axel Hawk. What's weird about this character to me is that it is one of few instances of me not liking a character based on someone I actually think is cool, George Foreman. Axel Hawk, on the other hand, to me as a character is a goof. Like, George Foreman, I know kind of had like a relatable personality and everything, but the man was a beast. Credit to SNK for doing an alright job of replicating Foreman's formidable power punches with Axel. Still, they should have made Axel stand out more and be badass. I feel like with this entry, I don't have much to worry about. If Axel returned as a playable character, I would be hella shocked. I mean, if they tweaked him and made him better, cool, but SNK, I'm gonna say it one more time. You want yourself a badass boxer? Rick. Right here. This guy. And that's that. Who would you like to see in City of the Wolves? Is there somebody that you hope stays on the bench? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, I am the Chris Lotus, signing off. Y'all take care of yourselves, be safe out there, be cool, and stay hydrated. See ya.